Muhammad Ali reinvented the way a boxing match was promoted. Arriving on the professional scene as Cassius Clay in 1960, he shifted the image of a heavyweight from the leathern slugger to one who could float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, making his fights a feast for the eyes. He was also unrivaled in showmanship.
I had 180 amateur fights, 1 2 professional fights, and I'm pretty as a girl. I don't get hit. I'm so pretty.
It enthralled and outraged the public, but proved itself when after a campaign of taunting, he beat the terrifying Sonny Liston to win his first title in 1964.
Well, ain't nobody gonna stop me. Not a heavyweight in the world fast enough to stop me. Liston's one of the powerfulest in the world, and he looked like a baby. I held my hands down here, and I can't do it. I just played with it. Oh, I shook all of you. Look at my body.
Clay would rename himself Muhammad Ali, and with his dazzling approach, rose ever higher in the public consciousness during his title defences between 1964 and 67.
Who do you want me to fight? You pick. Who do the press want me to fight? Who do you think you should fight? The best man. Who is the best man? Who do you think? I don't know. I'm going to leave it to you. Find him.
But nothing would stir up a frenzy like his clash with a fearless brawler named Joe Frazier. Coming up, in and out of the ring, Ali's rivalry with Frazier took drama to new levels. In 1967, Muhammad Ali made a statement that would turn a future rivalry into far more than a boxing match. Out of protest towards America's involvement in the Vietnam War, Ali refused military service, costing him his title and a possible 5-year prison sentence. He avoided doing time, but he was forced out of the sport from 67 to 1970. It polarized America. Those who supported Vietnam solidified a hatred for the outspoken champ. To those who opposed the conflict, he became even more of a hero. When Ali made his comeback in 1970, it was inevitable his new political charge would follow him into the ring. The first to get caught in its current was the man who'd risen to claim the title, Smoking Joe Frazier. With 2 warm-up fights under his belt, Ali would get a shot at Frazier with an encounter penned for March 8, 1971 at Madison Square Garden. Immediately, it grabbed the public's attention like nothing before it. Stylistically, it was a fascinating matchup. Ali had lost some of his form, but was still a fighter of grace and timing. Whereas Frazier was a relentless forward-moving mass with a chin of steel and the heart of a lion. Then there was the pre-fight antics. Ali was back to his antagonistic best and was dealing with an opponent who was clearly unintimidated.
And I want to make one prediction. I'm not calling around. I predict that when I meet Joe Frazier, this will be like a good amateur fighting a real professional. This will be like a kid out of the Olympics meeting the fastest heavyweight champion that ever lived. This will be no contest. I just look
at Glory, you're not fighting Oscar Bonavera, you're not fighting Sonny Liston, you fighting Joe Frazier.
Everybody knows that. That's not the point.
That's the point.
John, what's your prediction?
My prediction, the fight wouldn't go the distance.
Oh, it won't
I'll
go the
stop
distance.
it.
Stop me, you.
But what really whipped anticipation into a frenzy was the political fuel thrown on the fire, which caused events that overshadowed Ali's career. For such a pretty fighter, he resorted to ugly tactics, working to position Frazier as a figure who supported the war, labelling him an Uncle Tom. It was a cruel blow and one without merit. Frazier actually opposed the war too, but he wasn't the outspoken radical Ali was. And so, Muhammad lumped him in with the rest of his enemies.
Ali was very angry. He had been in exile for 3 years. Joe Frazier had become the symbol of his oppressors, and he vented some of his anger on Joe.
Add insult to the wound, Frazier had also been one of many campaigning to have Ali's boxing license reinstated while he was in exile. To the master of manipulation, that meant nothing.
He felt that with Joe, as he did with many of his opponents, that if he demeaned Joe, it would be a way of establishing psychological superiority that might translate into superiority in the ring.
When it came to the duel of words, it wasn't entirely a fair fight. Ali was as gifted as anyone before or since.
Joe's gonna come out smoking, and I ain't gonna be joking. I'll be pecking and a poking, pouring water on his smoking. Then this might shock and amaze you, but I will destroy Joe Frazier. Some people say, you better watch Joe Frazier, he's awful strong. I said, tell him to try band roll-on. That's deodorant.
Joe, on the other hand, had his limits.
He called you a good street fighter. Does that make you mad?
Don't make me mad at all.
How do you react?
I feel like I'm just as much fighter, or better, and twice times as better as him.
Despite his fearsome image and reputation, at heart, Joe was still an innocent farm boy from South Carolina. He didn't understand what Ali was doing and developed a genuine hatred. By March 8, it had forged a different kind of focus.
Joe didn't have the verbal tools to combat Ali outside the ring, so he let it all out inside the ropes.
Frazier came packing intentions Ali had never encountered. But the former champ had his own frustrations to unleash, and it delivered a fight that lived up to all the hype. Over 14 brilliant rounds, the advantage went back and forth, electrifying the stadium. Finally, in the last round, one of the left hands Joe had been throwing all night connected and sent Ali to the canvas. When the bell rang and the scorecards came in, Frazier delivered Ali his first career defeat. Some felt it was controversial, but the knockdown was the defining point.
It was a great fight. Frazier won. There are dissenters who feel differently about it, but to my mind, and I'm an Ali fan, I was rooting for Ali then, I'm rooting for Ali now. Joe Frazier won that fight.
Frazier got his own back for the verbal abuse he'd suffered, for a time. Their rematch wouldn't come for 3 years and lacked the hype of the first. Both were beyond their prime and had suffered a loss. Joe to George Foreman and Ali to Ken Norton, both in 1973. But what hadn't declined was Ali's tongue. This time he insulted Joe's intelligence. It further cemented Frazier's detest, which compounded in the fight. Ali deployed controversial clinching tactics that shut down Frazier's left hand. Sly as it was, it worked. And this time, Ali won by decision. Bad blood would carry into their third and final encounter the following year. Ali had become lineal champion after his historic victory over George Foreman and 3 subsequent title defenses, setting up a fight with Frazier that came to be known as the Thriller in Manila. This time, Ali's taunts reached an all-time low, calling Joe ugly and far worse.
Third fight, he called Joe a gorilla, with all of the ugly racial stereotyping that went along with that.
Proving he wasn't completely incapable of a comeback, Joe referred to his successful legacy as a father. I have 11 babies, he said, so somebody must have thought I was cute. Jokes aside, it cut deeper still, further dividing the two. And the fight took their feud to the very edge and almost beyond. On October 1st, 1975, a night of suffocating heat in the Filipino capital, Ali and Frazier embarked on one of the most brutal bouts in history. Frazier's eye swelled so much, it rendered him near blind, allowing Ali to fire shots at will. By the 14th round, fearing for his fighter's life, Frazier's trainer relented and threw in the towel. Ali, who admitted he too was close to death, had finally witnessed something that transcended their feud. "I always bring out the best in men I fight," he said. "But Joe Frazier, I'll tell the world right now, brings out the best in me. I'm gonna tell you, that's one hell of a man, and God bless him." Later, Ali apologized and began trying to heal the damage he'd done.
He understood that he had stepped over the line in some instances. He said to me on more than one occasion, "Joe Frazier's a good man. I'm sorry I hurt him." But Joe, unfortunately, never lost his hatred for Ali. From time to time, they'd get together, usually for economic reasons, for some joint appearance of one kind or another. But he hated Ali, and he hated Ali until he died. That's very sad.
The drama surrounding the Ali-Frazier trilogy brought out some of the ugliest exchanges in boxing. But the 3 times they met in the ring were the most glorious. And for that, we pay homage.